What a beautiful thing it is that we get to come here every week and be lifted up by this beautiful music. Okay, we have no movement on the remote, so Lester, would you advance it to the title of the talk, please? There you go. So as we go into meditation this morning, as we take a few minutes to take a few deep breaths and to go into our center, I invite you to consider what we're talking about this morning, the light of power, the outrageously courageous act of resurrecting your light. So as the song just said, with my own two hands, and we're resurrecting our own light to connect with the light of all the beautiful souls on this planet. And that's what we want to contemplate this morning. And I'm going to ask that Dawn, if you'll take it up one more. I can see people, their teeth are chattering. Thank you. So let's take a few deep breaths. We take that breath into our belly and let our entire body feel this beautiful wash of oxygen. And we're setting an intention when we take that deep breath to be present, attentive, listening with our hearts and our minds, listening for that still small voice or that directive from the one presence within us and around us. We allow ourselves to take a pause and to consider our willingness to step into this idea of resurrecting our own light. Pondering this idea, this courageous idea, that each one of us could actually make a difference in the world with our presence. And that in our presence, others can awaken to their own divine identity. It's a powerful notion. And so as we take a few more deep breaths, we're simply going to give ourselves over to this possibility, this idea, this invitation. It's a clue to our sacred and holy life purpose, each one of us, to increase awareness of our own light, to expand and deepen light, meaning the consciousness, the wisdom that guides our world, our lives, our actions, holding in our hearts the well-being of the all. Our human family, the four-leggeds, the winged ones, the water, the minerals, the air, the mountains, the oceans. Guided by that light, our decisions can only be about making the decision for the whole community of life. And so we pause and take a few moments of silence to consider that we might want to step more fully into this idea of resurrecting our own light. We give thanks that this expanding light becomes the healing balm. It helps to heal our world, transform the beliefs that harm. And so today we remember the words of Rumi, who told us, I wish I could show you in your hours of darkness the astonishing light of your own being. I wish I could show you in hours of darkness the astonishing light of your own being. So we give thanks for the pause and for remembering this and setting intention to expand that light in. We say, so it is, and so we let it be. Namaste. Let's turn to somebody and say, I see the astonishing light of your being. Now we'll never get them back. So here we are on this bright, sunshiny day. I told David, I said, it's the sun's out. Who's going to come to church this morning? So here we are, creating our sunshine within this room. And we want to start with what this writer, Linda Martellowitz, said in the book Divine Audacity. She quoted from the book of Timothy in the King James Bible, saying, God did not give us a spirit of cowardice. I know. And yet there's times when I'm afraid. What about you? But that's not one of my divine abilities. But I can use it as a teacher. I can use my anxiety to show me where I need to do my healing process or my work. So God did not give us a spirit of cowardice, but rather a spirit of power and of love and of mastery, self-mastery. That's the spiritual abilities that Charles Fillmore was looking at when he taught about the 12 powers. He said, all of these capacities are within you. You don't have to run out and figure out a way to get these capacities. It's all within you. So what we're talking about, again, because we talk about the same thing every Sunday, what we're talking about is revealing these capacities. You can call that revelation, if you want, an unveiling, a revealing of the trueness of who we are, not these ideas of being less than, but the trueness of who we are as being the magnificence of spirit. Does that make sense? Yes. Shall we continue? And thank you. I think Cynthia brought these in. Aren't they beautiful? Beautiful. So, 12 powers, here they are. And of course there's many more. These are the words that Fillmore seized on to describe these capacities within us. And today we're talking about the one called mastery or power. So Einstein says this, I believe in the God of Spinoza. So I had to look up what was Spinoza all about. And what Spinoza taught was this idea of pantheism, which we know as oneness. We know as the teaching that everything is connected. There's nothing with which we're not connected. We're all in relationship with all of life in all of its forms. And it's the concept of the presence of God in everything and in each one of us. That's simply what it is. So separateness from that energy or God or divine energy, that's impossible. We can't separate from it. Now that gets a little tricky when we're trying to be all spiritual and then we separate in our consciousness from the people we don't like. It's a divine illusion. It's not real. We cannot separate ourselves from the energy of the all that is. We'd like to, but we can't. So everything that I do in the world is having an effect on the all. So once I'm awake enough to know that, I start reflecting a little bit more on my decisions and my actions. As simple, should I preach a little bit? It can be as simple as not asking for a straw. Yep. Yes. getting applause for? So it can be as simple as that. Now somebody would say, well, what good does that do? Well, in the long haul, if I tell my server to don't bring the straw, and a lot of other people do, then that small thing becomes a huge thing. You see how that works?
And carry your own bag.
And carry your own bags. So separateness from God, or separateness from my actions having an effect on the whole, it's impossible. My actions are going to have an effect on the whole collective, as do your actions. So it draws us into more responsibility or accountability. So if the presence of God is within us, then can we have multiple ways of seeing and hearing as aspect of our power or our light within?
Absolutely.
It's a long question.
Absolutely.
Because in considering this idea that we're resurrecting our own light, there needs to be a kind of acceptance of who we are. There needs to be an acceptance of what we're made of and what we're about and what we're here to do. There has to be, and even if we can't fully accept it, we can accept this idea that our presence makes a difference, and we can live into the idea as if it's true, and then just explore and see what is revealed for you. Because if I don't feel that I am the light, then what good does it do for me to try and unveil that or express even more of it? I have to step into the ideas if it's true. That's the way it works for me. So this is going to be our divine experiment. So in The Magic of Conflict, any of you know that book? Thomas Crumb. He wrote it about his work with Aikido and how we work with energy in the world. And he said there is no true path without the center of who we are. And with center, the mind, body, and spirit merge. That's what happens when we take a deep breath. When we say, let's go into the center, into the core of our being, that heart of wisdom. That centers, that helps body, mind, and spirit to be in alignment. Passion and commitment unleash a force that cannot be contained. I want to take a deep breath on that one. Passion or enthusiasm and commitment unleash a force that cannot be contained. So last week, I invited Lindsley and John out to the land. They're both medicine people, healers, teachers. And I just simply wanted them to feel the land, walk on the land. And I've been listening to the ancestors out there. I wanted to hear what they were hearing. And one of the things Lindsley shared was this land, the ancestors, the energy here, is waiting for the commitment. And that commitment keeps growing. Every time we go out there to plant a tree, every time we're pushing the wheelbarrow, every time we're cleaning the walls or painting or putting up the angel wings, every time we're out there planting the bulbs, we are showing our commitment to this idea of expanding the light or being a place, a presence, an energy. People step on the land and they feel their own awakening or their own sense of magnificence. Does that make sense? That's what going to the center does for each one of us personally. Now we're building a center. I hope y'all are connecting the dots, because I just see Spirit at work in such divine ways as I can hardly contain it. So Fillmore said, the power that rules the world is within. Right? The power that rules the world is within. Now I can take that power and I can do something unkind with it. Y'all have probably heard of human beings doing that sort of thing. And I can take that same power that's available to me and I can create kindness or helpfulness in the world. I can at the least be a non-harmful presence with that power. I want to, Jim Troutman gave a great quote this morning. He said, what we're working with is a loosely organized structure of reality. a loosely organized structure of reality. So when I see what's happening in the world around me, I can interpret and define it in terms of our awakening is unfolding, or I can interpret it as the world's going to hell in a handbasket and there's nothing that we can do. You see how that works? The way I perceive it, the way I define it, the way I interpret it. So what makes my world work for me is when I interpret it as if my life has sacred purpose. I have that light within me. I'm called to reveal more of that light, and in the revealing of that light, others around me remember their own light.
Absolutely. Amen.
That's the formula. So the world of spontaneous remission and placebo. Y'all remember this story about that Harvard conference. I got a lot out of that conference. And the title was Spirituality and Healing in Medicine. So at one point, we were discussing the idea of placebos. You know, somebody thinks they're taking the miracle drug when in fact it's a sugar pill, but their bodies and minds begin to respond as if they're really receiving the magic medicine. It's a phenomenon that doctors discounted for many, many decades. They would actually write on the chart just the placebo effect, discounting the power of our human minds and hearts to work together to create outcomes of healing. And Herb Benson, you all remember him, he wrote the relaxation response, he did all the research with the transcendentalist meditators. He leans across the podium, looks at this 1,000+ doctors, researchers, psychologists, psychiatrists. He leans across the podium and says, we for years discounted people when they come to us and tell us about their remissions and about their illnesses subsiding, and we say to them, well, that's only the placebo? He leaned across the podium and he said, my God, what have we done? We have discounted the power of the human spirit to affect healing change in the body and the mind and our emotions. He said, we have done a disservice in the world by discounting the power of humankind. So what is it? What is it within us? I mean, we know people who've regrown kidneys. We know people who were blind and now they see. We've known people who cancerous tumors have shrunk. The miracles are happening all the time, constantly, and we have the audacity to discount the power that's within us. So I'll take a deep breath. We're an adorable species. So in the eye of the storm, which we're doing on Thursday nights for the next 4 Thursday nights, Gary Simmons says, I experience my center within me and you experience yours within you. We're always reaching for that center. Yet your center is the same place in the universe as mine. We're all in the center. Your center and my center and the center of the universe are all the same. And yet, we're so adorable, we will convince ourselves that we are separate from the center of the universe. There's everybody else is in the center, but somehow I got way over here. Don't we? So how would my life feel different and be different if I consider that I am at the center of the universe and the universe is conspiring for my awakening? How would my life feel different? How would I act differently? What my decisions would look like if I really knew that to be true? So you remember this story out of the book of John where Jesus went to the spa where the hot tubs were? Remember? The Pool of Bethesda, that's what it's called. Remember this story? Jesus goes to the pool, the healing pool. People would go into the waters and trust and expect that they would be healed. This particular man had been unable to get into the waters without anyone to help him. And Jesus, who we can look at as the higher consciousness or the healing consciousness or the transformative consciousness, Jesus just said to him simply, well, pick up your bed and walk. Can you imagine what this man was saying? Well, I haven't walked in 30 years. This consciousness, this atmosphere of awareness, this higher understanding of spiritual law, walked by and said, pick up your bed, brother, and walk. Jesus spoke from his center to the center of the eternal spiritual being of the man at the pool. Let's take a deep breath. When you are holding healing energy with someone, when you're holding a vision with them, when you're praying with them, it doesn't help for you as the one praying to see that person as broken. What helps is for you to look from your center as an eternal spiritual being and look at the other person, the students, the friends, the community who are acting wacky. We look at them from our eternal spiritual beingness and we see them in their eternal spiritual beingness. We don't have to ask, well, what religion are you? We don't have to ask, well, what holy book do you read? We don't have to ask, well, what church are you a member of? We just simply, from our eternal spiritual being, see them as an eternal spiritual being, and in that atmosphere, greater healing energy can move. That's why it's so important when you've got something hard going down in the family, in your body, in your community of beloveds, you will be so happy to have someone on your team who can hold the higher perspective while you're dealing with the details of managing whatever the event is. Have somebody else on the team who knows that you as an eternal spiritual being are ministering to and comforting that other eternal spiritual being, and in that the holy work's being done. You see how that works? So what we're after in resurrecting our own light, and here's the key, to be a presence in which others are reminded of their divinity. You see, I always laugh when somebody says to me, well, I'm not in a relationship right now. And I go, we're always in relationship with each other. We're even in relationship with all the formers that we've had. We're still in relationship with them. We're always relating and swapping light. We're always swapping light and touching into one another's energy fields, and we're constantly exchanging information, spoken and unspoken, to help each other wake up. It's magnificent the way that works. So, what is it? You know, we've got some old beliefs. We've got some beliefs, maybe it's just me, but every once in a while I think, I'm not the light of the world. Right now I'm being a goofball. I'm not the light of the world. That's when that Christ or awakened consciousness in me says, oh no, pick up that bed and walk. Don't wallow in that false idea that you are less than. Pick up that bed and get on out of here. You know, we've got some old beliefs that keep us in a sinking place of not knowing our divinity. We actually talk ourselves out of knowing our own divinity and our own light. That's why it's so outrageously courageous when we even give ourselves over to the idea that it's true. Speak to our old beliefs. So what if Jesus had said, gosh, I sure hope you get better. Or, gee, good luck with that. And keep on walking.
You still be laying, trying to get in the pool.
We just wouldn't have as good a story as we have right now. If Jesus had said, well, you know, I've got my divine consciousness, hope you get yours. Yeah. You know, I'm resurrected into the light. You know, hope you got your manual because, you know, I'm done. I'm out of here. So when you see someone shining less than the magnificent light, We can hold them in a consciousness of what they're not doing right, what they're not doing well, and that we just don't want to spend any time with them. Or we can hold them in a consciousness as an eternal spiritual being that they have the capacity to know their light and express that light. That's what we hold. And I know it's a practice. It's a practice. So if the human family was not fighting each other, what could we create together?
Heaven on earth.
Heaven on earth. If we're not creating from defensiveness, then we are creating from our center. If I'm not seeing any enemies around me, then I don't have to be defensive. If I'm simply seeing eternal spiritual beings who've forgotten that they're the light of the world, that changes everything. I'm not seeing an enemy or a bad guy. I'm seeing an eternal spiritual being who has forgotten their light. And I'm sure people have looked at me from time to time and said, there's an eternal spiritual being, she's forgotten her light. That is a more kind way to hold each other in our consciousness.
An easy way to be able to love everyone.
An easy way
One and all.
to be able to love everyone. So Joseph Rael, who is Lindsley's teacher, also known as Grandfather Joseph, and some of you know, a few of us in this room have done the long dance with Lindsley, a Native American ceremony in which we dance for the peace of the world and the people. Joseph Rael says, to know ourselves as the vast self playing is to be both human and divine. It is for this we are all born, to be mystics, fully alive and dancing. Let's take a deep breath. You may not describe yourself as a mystic. You are, however, affiliated with a movement founded by a co-founder, Charles Fillmore, who has been known throughout these many years as a modern American mystic. The man who's coming in May, Jim Rosemary, he perceives that we're all mystics. Many of us perceive that we are called to the mystery, to the mystical. We're called to see that aspect of life. This is what we're born for, this teacher says. We're born to be the light. And Lindsley shared with us on Friday that Grandfather Joseph teaches that water holds and brings forth light. So for any of us who complained about the rain or the flooding, here's a new perception. Water holds light. Think of what you are mostly made up of. Water. Just that one little understanding. We're mostly water. We're light. So last night, in the middle of the night, when I was doing some healing work with my body, I breathed into this idea and imagined the river of light flowing through me. And you know, the pain ceased. And next thing that happens, I'm waking up. No pain. The river of light flowing through us. The old Pentecostal song was, there's a river of life. What about if it's a river of light moving through us? So this is Alex Gray's portrayal of the light that is within us. I've shown this here before. It's one of my favorite images that Alex Gray does in his book, Illuminations. He sees the light moving through us. He doesn't see the covering of the body. It's not depicting the color of the eyes or the skin or the hair. He's simply depicting the light that moves through us all. And in this image, the light from within the artist is being expressed and painted onto the canvas. And that, I love this picture because that's what we do. When we're in our center, when we know our light, that's what we're projecting out into the world. That's what we're putting onto the canvas. But if I have inside me an idea that I'm not the light, and that I'm very afraid and defensive of the world, then I'm putting something else onto the canvas. Does that make sense? So this is what we want to deepen into and explore and give ourselves over to. This idea that You know, sometimes people say, I don't know my life purpose. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. Well, here's a clue. We're called to be the light, expand the light, deepen the light, and be a presence in which others awaken to their own light. That's a pretty big life purpose. Meaning everything we do is about that. And just one more little picture of what we look like when we're standing in our light. Some people can see this. Some people can see the grid of energy and the light energy that's within you and all around you and how you affect the grid. So let's take a deep breath. Lofty ideas or very real possibilities? Divine idea of being the light, expanding the light, and being a presence in which others awaken to their own light. Lofty idea or very real possibility? Or both? And so we deepen into this idea, we let ourselves play with it and dance with it, this idea that we are the light, we are resurrecting our light that's been held captive by old ideas of us being less than, expanding that light, resurrecting it. We set intention, we say it so, and we say let it be. Namaste. Thank you. Oh, and by the way, I want you to know that Dan came prepared today for Holy Communion. He's brought 3 flavors of Peeps. And so these are available up here after service if you like. Thank you, Dan, for remembering to bring Peeps to the Peeps.
And thank you, Margaret, for a wonderful message. You know, I think I would have called that not the light of power, but the power of light.
Yeah.
You know, they say, be the change you wish to see in the world, be the light you wish to see in the world, be the healing you wish to see in the world. We all need to remember that. All right.